What's up guys, I'm Luke, and today we are checking out the Jet City 100 HDM, and let me tell you what, this bad boy can fit so much freaking gain in it. Let's get on to the demo track. Alright, so that was the Jet City 100 HDM in a full band context, and now I'll just kind of give you guys my thoughts and kind of do a playthrough and mess with the settings and whatnot. Now I will say, before we get too in depth with the review, that these are my honest thoughts and opinions after owning this thing for I think over 2 years now, but, and this is a big but, just remember that pretty much any negative points I bring up about this, there's going to be a fix for that at the end of the video, so just keep that in mind, because Jet City's got something really special for all of their amps now that I want to share with you guys. But anyway, let's get on with the actual review part. Alright, so you may or may not know that the early Jet City products were designed by none other than the legendary Mike Soldano of Soldano Custom Amplification, and his overdrive circuit, especially on the Soldano SLO 100, is fantastic, and that is what this amp is based on. It's not a copy of the SLO, but of his Hot Rod 100, which is slightly different from the SLO, but just listen to this thing. Yeah. Alright, so I know you guys want to hear more of the gain channel, but let's start it off clean, and let's just kind of run through the amp real quick. So, you have two dedicated channels. You have your crunch channel and your overdrive channel. Notice how I didn't say clean. There is technically no clean channel on this amp, but you can still coax some nice clean tones out of it. So going from left to right, we have our preamp gain for the crunch channel, the preamp gain for the overdrive channel. We have an LED that comes on to indicate that the overdrive channel is on or off. We have shared bass, middle, and treble. We have a master volume for the crunch channel and a master volume for the overdrive channel. And then presence. And then the cool thing about the HDM is the D stands for the depth knob. This isn't installed on the regular 100 Jet City head, but on the HDM it comes with it. And then you can switch this amp from 100 watts to 50 watts with the flick of a switch right here. I like it to leave it in 100 watts. And then you have your standard standby and then your on-off switch. Another cool thing about this amp is that the LED jewel light is actually inside the power on-off switch. I think it's a cool touch. You don't have a jewel light on the front of the amp. Alright, so let's just start off with a nice clean sound. I'm going to bring up the volume here a little bit, and I've got everything just dialed into noon. So this is kind of the cleanest this amp gets. Yeah, that's about as clean as it gets. I'm running a Seymour Duncan JB in the bridge here, so pretty hot humbucker. But if I switch over to like some like the neck and middle position single coils, you can kind of bring that up a little bit and get a really nice breakup out of that. I'm gonna play with these a little bit. Yeah, when I bought this amp, I wasn't expecting to get this good of a clean sound out of this amp. It's not an amazing clean sound, but it's actually pretty nice. You can definitely get away with using this clean for a lot of different applications. It's for a high gain rock and roll kind of tube head, you can get some really nice clean sounds out of this. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's just bring up the crunch a little bit. And we'll set it to like right there, so about halfway. And we'll go back to humbucker. And this is kind of where your classic rock sounds start to come. Now with this amp, you do have to watch the treble knob right here. It can kind of get out of hand and get a little harsh depending on where you've got it. Past like 7 or so, it just gets a little too bright. So I like to leave it somewhere between like 6 or 7, depending on the channel and whatnot. And let's just take the gain up a little more. And they call it a crunch channel, but this channel's got quite a bit of gain, and where this channel leaves off, the overdrive comes in, so just keep that in mind. That's got plenty of gain. Holy crap. Let's take that down. I actually, for this channel, I like the lower gain settings. Normally, I actually do prefer to use it as a clean channel. But, you know, it can actually get some really nice, you know, like I said, classic rock songs out of it, so. Alright, so, and, oh, one thing I do want to mention, kind of a, not a huge deal. There is a slight channel bleed issue whenever you're using, say, like a really high gain setting on one channel and a really low gain setting on another channel, so. It's kind of hard to hear, but depending on where you have the gain set on these two channels, you can actually hear the other channel bleed through. And I can demonstrate that here on, if I take the crunch gain all the way up and the overdrive down. If I go to the overdrive channel, that shouldn't happen, but it's not a huge deal. But it is something just to keep aware of whenever you're using cleaner settings on this amp. That it can dirty up your clean sound a little bit. But, like I said, just stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you guys how to fix that. Alright, so now moving on to the overdrive channel. It is foot switchable, and actually, I do want to show this foot switch because it is kind of cool. This amp defaults when there's no foot switch engaged to the overdrive channel, which I don't know why, I kind of like that. It's kind of a cool little feature. Yeah, it'd be nice if you could access the clean channel with a flick of a switch on the front. But I don't know, it's kind of a cool little like attitude thing. So here's the foot switch right here. And again, part of that whole attitude thing, I like how the foot switch is just a single button and it does one thing and one thing only. It has a super bright LED. You can see it's just as bright as the LED on the amp. And it's a nice metal casing. You can really beat the crap out of this thing and not worry about hurting it at all. But it's kind of cool just having like a one button foot switch that it just does the one thing. I don't know why. I think it's kind of you know, it'd be cool if you had a whole bunch of switches and knobs and functions and stuff, but just having like the one button kind of gives it like a rock and roll attitude. All right, overdrive channel. That's the sound right there. That is the Soldano overdrive circuit. And man, what a sound that is. Alright, so let's just go ahead and I'll show you guys the gain range that this channel has, because where this one leaves off, this one starts to pick up. So here is the gain at about 1. I can't really see it, but... That's already like heavy overdrive, and we're at 1 on the dial. So take it up to like 3 and... And let's just take it up to like 6. This is where it just starts getting nuts. And screw it. Let's take the gain all the way up. Just listen to how much gain this is. Listen to this thing just hum. And let's just take that back down, because holy crap, that's a lot of gain. And let's just show you guys the bass knob on here. Man, you can just really hear how much that depth knob really fills out the sound. I've never played through the 100H and the new 100 LTD, which those do not have the depth knob. So I don't know if there's a huge difference, but man, this knob right here, that's why I specifically wanted this model, because the low end on the HDM is just nuts. Holy crap. But yeah, that is just the pure, it's the Soldano Hot Rod 100 sound. But man, that sound is just like, that is it. That is the sound of rock and roll. The Soldano amps have been on so many different records and used for so many different things. And this is just a great way to get that sound at a much more affordable price. So let's go ahead and try to get some lead sounds. That is what this amp excels at, is the lead sounds. And if you get the gain to about 7 or so, the sound just gets so thick and meaty. Oh my god, I think that note would go on forever. That is what this amp does best. If you want super saturated, just insane amounts of gain and clarity and just a thick, warm lead sound, this is the amp you want. As far as rhythms, my biggest complaint with this amp is that since it is so thick and meaty, it's got plenty of gain on tap, and it's got a nice, aggressive, just huge, thick mid-range. And then the top end, like I said, it can get a little bitey depending on where you have it, so you got to keep that in check. But it can add a nice sizzle to the sound. My biggest complaint for me as a metal player and playing like really fast stuff, like... Oh, well, I gotta take the gain down first where I normally have it, but... my biggest complaint is that it doesn't quite track as fast as I would like. The low end is a little flubby for my taste, and that's just, that's part of the voicing of the amp. As far as tightness, I'd say it's somewhere in between, say, like... a dual rectifier and a 5150. So it's kind of, the HDM is kind of in between those two amps in terms of low end tightness and how quickly they react. All right, so let's talk pros and cons and then kind of my personal thoughts on the amp. First, we'll start with pros. This is an amazing value for what you're getting. This amp runs street for about $500, and this is totally a professional grade, just amazing sounding all tube amp head. And when I say professional grade, probably one of the biggest names that uses this specific amp is Zacky Vengeance from Avenged Sevenfold, which I am a fan of that band, and I found out about this amp before I found out he even used it. I was already sold on it because I was obsessed with the Soldano sound. And then I found out that he used it. I was like, man, I gotta have that thing. That is so cool that he can have any amp in the world and he chooses to use these. Another thing this amp has going for it is the simple layout and just the straightforward rock and roll factor. Now, that can be a pro or a con depending on who you are. Personally, I'm one of those guys. I like having multiple channels and EQs for each and switches and knobs and different volumes and gains and whatever. But there's a nice charm to this amp about just being straightforward and easy to use with the shared EQ and whatnot. That's, and the foot switch. I don't know why. I think that's a cool thing. Most people would think that might be like some kind of negative, but there's something cool about just the simplistic factor of this amp. And one of the last cool things about this amp is that through Jet City, if you buy off their Amp Factory website, these amps all throughout their entire range have a lot of custom options that you can choose from. As you can see, you can't get the white Tolex and the bright LEDs like I have in here. That's just part of my crazy cosmetic thing. But there is a nice blue LED that lights up to kind of make the tubes glow. And you can order things like, you know, custom white chicken knobs or any color you want, basically. Different front baffles and all kinds of really cool things that Jet City will do for you. All you have to do is just order off their Amp Factory website. I'll link that down below in the description so you guys can check that out. But you can get a lot of cool personalized options for your amp for their entire range. Alright, so now we'll talk about some of the negative points of this amp. One of the biggest issues a lot of people have with these amps, and it's not necessarily Jet City's fault, it's more of the design by Mike Soldano. His designs use a line level effects loop, and what that means is that the amps are expecting rack gear, so a lot of pedals don't really play too well with the effects loop in this amp. It can kind of overload them and cause them to be all distorted and not generally sound too great. But again, wait till the end of the video and I'll tell you guys how to fix all of that stuff, so just hang on. And as I said before, depending on who you are, the shared EQ may or may not be a good or bad thing for you. Some people like the straightforward layout. For me personally, it's not a huge deal. I think my biggest thing is that the clean channel is very warm and kind of mellowed out. And to alleviate that, I would need to bring the presence and the treble way up and probably the bass down. But then if I switch over to the overdrive channel, it'd sound really thin and harsh and whatnot. So I EQ this amp for the overdrive channel and just kind of deal with the clean channel. Again, not a huge deal, and it's not even technically a clean channel. It's supposed to be a crunch channel anyway. But even with that considered, it's still a very nice clean channel. I just personally prefer a brighter clean channel, but if you love the dark, kind of mellow and warm cleans, this amp's perfect for you. And kind of tagging off of that is that you can't really have crunch and clean at the same time. I know on the Soldano SLO, there is a toggle switch that you can kind of choose either clean or crunch. This one, you kind of got to deal with either clean or crunch, and that's just decided by this knob over here. If you prefer a more gained up kind of rhythm sound, you will use the overdrive for leads, you can do that. I use the overdrive channel for rhythms and then just use the crunch channel for cleans, but you can set it up however you want. So again, may or may not be a consideration for you. And as I mentioned before, this amp does have a small channel bleed issue, and when I say small, it's hardly noticeable. I actually didn't even know about it until recently when somebody pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh, hey, check that out, there is kind of channel bleed in there. This amp is such high gain that you hardly notice it. You more so notice it on the crunch channel if you're using super low gain settings and you have the overdrive just cranked. Other than that, not a huge deal really. You can live with it, it's totally fine. And for a $500 amp, not a bad deal at all. Alright, so my personal thoughts on this amp. Like I said, I'm very happy owning this thing. I don't think I will be getting rid of it anytime soon. I do love it a lot. I just don't use it as much for high gain rhythms, especially being like a metal player. And that is solely just because the low end is a little too, a little too flubby for me. But if I want to play like sludgier, heavier, slower hard rock stuff, this amp is great for that. It's just the faster things. This amp doesn't quite keep up with my style of playing. Alright, so I've been teasing all video how any possible cons of this amp can be easily fixed, and here's the answer. Recently, Jet City partnered up with Epic Amplification to create their official mod shop for their entire range of amplifiers. I'll put the link down below in the description, but basically what Epic does is they allow you to create your perfect dream amp through Jet City, all with full 100% factory warranties. And it's easy and fast, and you can do it yourself, or you can have them do it if you'd like. They have all kinds of options to fix things like the channel bleed issue I mentioned. You can add external bias pots, just kind of like quality of life things. And then another really cool thing is that you can actually completely change the voicing of your amp. And there's tons of different options you can choose from, companies like Diesel and Bogner and Friedman, and all kinds of really cool options that if you've always wanted a Bogner Uberschall but you can afford a Jet City HDM, you can go ahead and send that into Epic, or they can send you the mod kits with clear instructions, and you can do it yourself, and all of a sudden you have an amp that sounds as close as possible to the Bogner. That's just one example, but there's tons of different options on the website, really cool things that can customize your amp. Later on, I plan to fully spec out this amp through Epic's mods and really see what kind of beast this thing can turn into, because if it's already this good as is, I can't even imagine what kinds of crazy things that can come out of that. And I plan on doing a video to kind of show the mod process, because like I said, you can either send the amp through Jet City to Epic, or Epic can send the parts to have you mod it yourself with really easy and clear instructions that even without any tube amp knowledge or just basic knowledge, you can do safely. So I'm not quite sure what I will turn this amp into, because I really do love the Soldano sound, but right now as it stands, my 6505 Plus kind of has the same SLO vibe going for it. I modded that amp, so I kind of have two amps of kind of the same voicing, so I want to see what I can do to change this amp up. Alright, well I think that's pretty much all I can say about this amp. Overall, great purchase. If you're considering buying one, get it. I love mine. Overall, it's a great amp, guys. Seriously. I couldn't recommend this enough, especially for the value you get out of this thing. It's amazing. It can't be beaten value-wise. Links are down below in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Luke, and I'll see you guys next time. This bad boy can fit so much freaking gain in it.